we move on, before moving on, may I request all the ladies and the lords of the last benches to please come and sit on the tables. They are very friendly people over here. Yeah, they don't bite. They don't do anything which is unfriendly. Yeah, so please do come and sit with other people on the table. I also preferred being a lord of the last bench in school. It was a good exit plan, right? Okay. So from an architect, we move on with another compelling presentation that is going to come up, a subject that is very dear to my heart about what is a citizen's role and duty. Had the privilege of knowing Mr. Mike Rana, an IT professional who, for years now, family friends also. And Mr. Rana wrote a book last year which was published earlier this year and has become a bestseller, is now available on various online shopping portals which sell books, and is also kind of being looked into very seriously by several people in government, not only in the India but also in the US and places in the Europe. The book is called A Citizen's Manifesto. And what is the citizen's role? I shall invite Mr. Mike Rana to please come up on stage and present his talk to the gathering at the Rex Conclive 2012. Going to use the... So, 9 minutes bell, 12 minutes whistle, 14 minutes I
No,
come.
I will speak for about 15 minutes.
I'm just saying, just as a reminder.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm privileged to come here and speak to you on this platform. There's a difference between this platform and another platform where I spoke before, that is called TED. The difference is that there, one is not allowed to read the notes. One must come up and speak for exactly 14 minutes, and then he should go off. And there is a session of about half an hour to 45 minutes for questions and answers. But that was done a little bit before. Today, I don't have the memory to speak for 14 minutes. So I'm going to read out some of the portions. I hope you will bear with me. Well, there was a slide here. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Moving on towards prosperity is the title of my second book. The difference between the first book and the second book, both are about 600 pages, is that the first book, A Citizen's Manifesto, is giving you a view of the citizen, what he expects from the government. And the second book, moving on towards prosperity, is the reverse of it. How the government looks at citizens' viewpoint and what exactly they are doing and what exactly they are not doing. Cut your coat according to the cloth that you have. Save for a rainy day. Honesty is the best policy. These are some of the wisest sayings of our times, and the most unimpressive ones for the youth of today. Do you think our youth are fools? No, they are not. They have reasons to reject the cliches and proverbs of the older generation. Many of these were oxymorons of some kind or the other, in any case, giving contradictory advices when seen in combination. For the youth of today, for example, saving is not an option. Spending is. In the stresses of modern life, every day is a rainy day. Therefore, living this moment is more relevant than accumulating wealth and then giving it away to the next generation or be acquired by banks or the government. And this frame of mind is not nature-given. They have been lured by parents, friends, society in general to spend beyond means. Unless branded goods are possessed by them, they become unacceptable in friend circles. If men do not give expensive presents to their girlfriends, the relationships don't build up. For them, honesty is a question mark. They have seen enough of degradation in this respect in this country. There are many other cliches of one generation which fail to impress the next generation. Let's look at another side of modern life. Do Hindu children go to temples? Do they read religious literature? Do Muslim children think about family planning? Are the Sikhs okay with marrying in other castes? Those of you who have seen the recently released film, Oh My God, can add many other questions to this list. The point that I'm making here is about the belief system. What is right and what is not right? Who decides the answer to this question for a given situation or an issue? In olden times, it was the parents, teachers, social taboos, religious considerations. Today, it is the self. A child, youth, or an adult decides for himself what is right and what is wrong. It is for this reason alone that we need to prepare children suitably by improving our education. And here I am not talking about professional education. I am simply stating that everyone must understand his role as an individual, as a member of the family in which he lives, and as a citizen of this great country. And as citizens, the problem returns to us in the form of value system and the unification of faiths and beliefs. Diversity in terms of religion, region, culture, traditions, languages, and all other modern dimensions, such as material status, being rich or poor, power circles to which an individual attaches himself, reservations, etc., are leading us to a state of fragmentation and disintegration. This is really the opposite of what the country was trying to achieve through independence. Remember, we are a union of states, not a federation. The states are free to make their own laws and operate. But according to our constitution, we must remain united under the banner of a central government who would provide the necessary protection against external forces. The general idea that the Constitution conveys is that we should be thinking of ourselves as one united country. Divide and rule, an abuse that we generally use to defame the British, is not really their giving to this country. It was inherent in our own thoughts and beliefs caused by the spread of population over different regimes, different flavors of religion, and the sprawling diversity of multiple dimensions. If a group of 20 individuals is formed today, there is an ample chance that it would be split into many subgroups by the end of the day, governed by language, region, or religion. So, as a country, we are suffering from the ills of multiple belief systems that strongly disunite us. And we pay for this foolishness in different forms while dealing with international communities. Another serious issue deserves our attention. Most of you understand imperialism as a technique for acquiring wealth of other nations by colonizing or by occupying others' territory. I'm talking about financial imperialism. Financial imperialism is a super clever technique to achieve the same results without having to take the trouble of physical occupation. By maneuvering the political leadership of a country, and we discussed about it yesterday in some talk, and the political leadership is made to raise the level of external conflicts with neighboring countries, the advanced countries are selling high-cost weapon systems. By a similar brainwash, they coax the politicians to highlight a perception that there is immense internal shortage, so that large-scale imports could be resorted to. Transportation systems, energy systems, nuclear machinery, and many other things. And the politicians bite the bullet willingly because you know that it generates money for them. By cultural invasion through media and films, advanced countries popularize and glamorize their products in the name of brands. Our youth, with their impressionable mind, are taken in, thinking that their status is diminished unless they flash branded products. A perception also exists that branded goods are of high quality, even if they are produced in China. The aim of both these strategies, that is, the sale of high technology-oriented, high-cost specialized products, and that of branded consumer products, is just to grab the money from developing countries. The term emerging economies is used to glamorize the developing countries when they start indulging in increased imports. They even hire labor at low cost in developing countries to manufacture products or services and sell them back to the same country. They lure the brains and import them to work at cheap costs in their own countries, but at middle levels, and they achieve the same result of producing goods at low cost and making enormous profits. To cap it all, they indulge in unfair practices in international trade in order to suffocate the export of goods, agricultural produce, or services from the developing countries. In the end, the developing countries, by the foolishness of their leaders and innocence of citizens, end up being victims of financial slavery. Let's now speak about a bit about the citizens' role. First of all, it must be stated that a democratic country is not a welfare state. So the politicians should stop using the welfare schemes as carrots. They should empower the citizens, on the other hand, by education and employment. And the citizens should not offer themselves to be used under this ploy. Democracy is the combined emotion of freedom, equality, and rule of law. We must live and breathe these three sentiments passionately. We must resist all forces which jeopardize these sensations with all our might. We must force the leaders to provide us with an environment that nourishes these values. A single point agenda, the Lokpal Bill of Arvind Kejriwal, or election reforms by Anna Hazare, will be too slow a process to bring in real democracy. Some of us may not even live to see the results. I was so pleased to see that so many people here have done so much of work, and I certainly wish that you would all do even better in the future. Yet it must be added that most of these efforts are relevant only because our leaders and government have not done their job. While it is the duty of the citizens to put their individual bits, it's equally important that someone else, the leader or a government, consolidate these efforts. I believe that the mission of iCongo and the untiring and innovative efforts of the Karamveer community must be extended to broader spectrum of the Indian society. It is for these reasons that the limited vision of Kejriwal and Anna Hazare, the restricted scope of work by iCongo, that I recommend we find a leader, a worthy leader, who can emerge on the horizon of the country as someone who will lead us to prosperity, inclusive prosperity, that applies to 1.21 billion citizens. In today's times, political parties have lost their shine and sheen due to corruption and letting down the country in general. Therefore, they are incapable of obtaining a clear mandate from people, and coalition is the only alternative with them. What coalition is in real, each citizen must understand. It is an alliance of the political parties of different visions coming together to capture power or to sustain it. In coalition, it does not matter whether political agenda or manifesto of an individual party is. It will be diluted in any case. Well, in this particular situation, the solution that I would like to present is a leader, or a party that can reinstate the three tenets of democracy: freedom, equality, and the rule of law. They should be able to snatch away the stage from the ruling UPA in power or NDA in opposition. It can be perhaps a third front. Otherwise, the status quo of confusion and lack of governance would continue beyond 2014 elections. Only a different grouping of existing politicians, drunk with power and arrogance, may be formed, and various NGOs would continue to struggle and operate. Well, I wanted to speak something more, but due to shortage of time, I cut short. I would just say that if citizens could resist the temptations of branded products and the politicians the lure of commissions and high-cost purchases, we could create wealth for consumption within our own country and reduce the gaping void between the rich and the poor of today. So, guys, wake up, grab your voting card, and vote and empower the right person. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mike Rana. You'll have to take center stage for questions and answers. Okay, shall we have questions for Mr. Rana? But before we have questions, I would just like to say that thank you for that compelling presentation. At ICONGO, from the very beginning, with the Right Every Wrong movement, we decided never to have an individual who's promoted as a face of the movement, because I don't believe that leadership is a singular process. And the very concept that leaders have followers is a very redundant concept, because leaders don't have followers. Leaders create more leaders. And this country doesn't need one leader. This country needs a gang of leaders. Leaders who believe that they can work with people to find progress. Thank you. And that is the reason that, whenever we've done something, whether it's IDISHUM, which is our first citizen reporting portal that was created, or Halla Bolo, which we are actually kind of creating, and I'll tell you more about Halla Bolo very soon, which is basically empowering citizens to fight corruption. We've decided never to have a face, because I feel that any one man, any one woman can be killed, co-opted, corrupted, finished, bought out, whatever. But you cannot kill an ideology. So we need to create an ideology where everybody emerges as a leader. That's my sincere belief. I just wanted to start with that. We'll have a question from Simar Aluwalia. May we have the microphone with him, please?
Good morning. I really enjoyed your talk, and I agree with a lot of the things you said. But I think that there are a lot of challenges here that we face as a population, the citizens, and also on the governance side. Like recently, UPA came out with a strategy to literally buy votes by giving 32,000 rupees to 10 crore families by, doing away with subsidies. And they're saying this new policy is fiscally neutral. So while we understand what's happening, about how the West is playing us, but it's very difficult to get that to the rural side. And that is where, and they know that we don't count in terms of votes. So as long as we keep on going about our thing, they know that they just need to target the, just one second. So my question is, how do you effectively target these strategies? And how can we as intellectuals start that? And the other thing is that, when somebody like Kejriwal is trying to do something about it, now the counter, popular propaganda that they've started is that he always had a political motivation. So as long as an NGO, or a person who's trying to do something says that I do not want to lead or change, or I do not want to do something, people are okay with it. But the moment he steps in, and says, I want to do something, a majority of the population sort of sways away, saying that he has his own, will to succeed, and that's why he's doing that. And so taking the question a level further, when the person actually gets to the point of doing something, since every war is never based on idea, it's based on financial motives. So what usually happens is that, usually such a leader is either assassinated or, put away with, because we're ultimately governed by our human weaknesses. So I really agree with what you're saying, But the potential challenge is, how to overstep these three things, in terms of the strategies that those in the elitists are trying to use by buying votes and by trying to, support the upcoming parties like what Kejriwal is doing, and at the same time resist, because if you're an effective leader, then for example, what happened in Cuba, he did a lot of good for his own people, but then ultimately the whole world was against him because he stopped and a lot of sanctions were put onto them. So how to effectively combat this is the challenge. So if you have some inputs on that, it would be great.
Well, your question, or rather more than one question or comments together, and along with what Jerry was saying just now, my personal view it is, and of course it's subjective, it depends on individuals how you think about it. In my opinion, we have to have a leader, whether it is Kejriwal, Anna Hazare, or anybody else. Unless there is a leader, the country doesn't follow him. If you have many leaders, they start fighting with each other. They start underplaying another person. So what I want to emphasize, we need a person, a leader, who follows an ideology. And I cut short my speech a little bit on the ideology front. Equality, rule of law, and freedom. These are the three things that a democracy requires. And the citizens want this. Anybody who can do this, that means introduce freedom, and freedom is not a small thing. It means you should be free to do everything that you want to do, and wherever you want to do. Similarly, equality, it doesn't mean reservations. It means everybody should be inclusively connected, given all the benefits. Similarly, rule of law. It means that the criminal must be punished, and the person who is not a criminal should not be harassed. Now, if this ideology is to be formed, and somebody has to take it forward, you need a leader. You need a group of leaders maybe, but you still need all those leaders to be convinced that this is the ideology we have to fight with. But the other factors that you are saying about corruption and about other people going against each other, there are again two views. In my view, again, I will be contradicting a little bit to your perception. I consider, and I would like to mention that I've mentioned it in a big chapter in my book. Corruption is of two types. One is, I call it lubricating corruption, that lubricates the processes and the systems. The other one I call culpable, which should be punished. So all these people, like you gave examples, if they are taking away the natural resources and selling it away and taking the money and putting it in foreign banks, I call it culpable, because it doesn't give anything back to the citizens. But there are others who are indulging in corruption and introducing infrastructure in the country. So the citizens are getting at least 50% of it back. So we have to live with this. I don't think anybody here in this room will say that we can get rid of all types of corruption. At least it won't happen as long as I am alive. So the best way to do is let a little bit of corruption go on the way it is going on and give the benefits to the country. The other type of corruption we must stop. Similarly, the same thing happens to the leaders. There are some leaders who are transparent, who are honest, but we are choking them, we are not letting them come up. And why they're not coming up? Because the mafia is working around them. So if you have a leader and a team who follow the ideology and they are transparent, the ideology of freedom, equality, and rule of law, I'm sure that most of the people will give them the support. It need not be Kejriwal or anybody else. It can be anybody. It's a group. And unless we get this group here, in 2014, nothing will change. The politicians from one party will go to another party, and it will continue. The only way to change is to change to bring in the ideology.
I see a lot of hands going up, so maybe...
I know it's a very controversial subject.
Maybe we have another question. Sachin? May we have the microphone for Sachin, please?
Yeah, good morning, sir. My question is, what are your views on FDI in India? And secondly, don't you think that our brands or services are not competitive enough?
Please hold the mic so everyone can hear you.
Yeah, our brands and services are not competitive enough so that they don't stand any chance in the market against the foreign brands. So
Well, again, FDI is, I think it has become a political issue. The financial imperialism which I talked about in the beginning, FDI is one form of it. There are many other things that happen. According to my knowledge, FDI has both plus points and minus points. We have to live with it. The reason is, there are certain things which we cannot do. For example, you know this land problem, agriculture. If you go to the villages and say, we want to do consolidation and we'll give you facilities to do the agriculture in a mechanized manner, you can't do it because the law is against it. There are deficiencies in law to provide for consolidation properly. But if a foreign company wants to come, they go and pay money to these people. All the villagers, they join together, they offer their land to this foreign company. And the foreign company does what consolidation could have done. They employ high technology, equipment, etc. They produce more goods. They give something to the villagers, and they take the profits back to them. So if we could not incorporate good laws for consolidation, and the foreign countries are going to do it for us here, at least for 20, 30, 40 years, it will be good. After that, they will take away the land by some means, by the legal process, and the farmers would be left without the land, and the farmers who are getting a job, employment as an agriculturist in the same form will also lose it because they'll bring in machinery from outside. And that machinery will come from China.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rana, one more question. Someone who's not got a chance to ask a question at all. I see some very usual suspects, if I may call you. So we'll go with Kaizad. You may catch up with Mr. Rana over lunch. And we're going to break for lunch.
I see lots of questions, so I should run away because these are all controversial questions.
Good morning. I was with you all the way till you started defining corruption as lubricating and culpable.
Yes.
Because in my opinion, first of all, I think if we sort of start to say that a form of corruption is more acceptable than the other, we're already on that slippery slope. So maybe I'm a foolish idealist. But the other part of it that really bothers me about that is because what may be culpable to you is what's being used as lubricating sort of corruption to me. So for instance, if a cop is trying to lubricate a deal where I have to pay to get out of some trouble, is that not culpable at the end of the day, right? If a judge is being lubricated to let a criminal off the hook, that's culpable. So I think this distinction between lubricating and culpable, I think, is highly dangerous, particularly given what everybody in this room is sort of trying to achieve. And I find that sort of a little bit disturbing and dangerous, and I sort of want your comments on that.
Yeah, thank you, Kaizad, and I'm happy that you interjected because Mr. Rana had thrown in a caveat, if you noticed, that Jerry won't agree with this, and I said, okay, since I'm moderator, I won't come up with the disagreement, but if nobody else had, I would have thrown that in, because I believe, like integrity, which can be 100% or 0%, similarly, corruption is either there or not there. I always say this, and I try to kind of emphasize this with a simple example. You can't be pregnant in parts. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant, right? So it's the same thing with integrity, it's the same thing with corruption, right? You can't give a baby in parts, you can't deal with corruption in parts. So I'm happy that you brought this up. But we are open to suggestions.
All right.
So.
First of all, similes do not prove any logic. Comparing a pregnant woman with corruption is not a simile, in my opinion. It's a different situation. Corruption, when I define it as culpable, I am saying mining or natural resources which people are taking away, which is the property of the citizens, and they're taking away it for themselves and keeping the money outside of the country. I call it culpable, and there can be no two ways about it because it's very easily visible. The question comes on lubricating. Now again, we have to think of something. Suppose I switch off corruption, as all of us want today. Do you think tomorrow the systems will work? Nothing will work. Just imagine no corruption from tomorrow. At the same time, we are living in this world which is full of corrupt people. So what do? We have to find something in between. So I'm defining punishable as the one where people are consuming natural resources, and I'm saying, okay, we'll accept lubrication a little bit because at the end of the day, we are getting the bridges made, we are getting the aircraft flying, we are getting the new godowns being made for Food Corporation of India. So do you think that those things should not come? And they will not come unless some kind of lubrication is done.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Rana. So we shall conclude with that, and I do kind of agree with Mr. Rana that we do not live in an ideal world. We live in a highly corrupt world where people are most corrupt. But yes, I don't agree and understand the concept of culpable versus lubricated, but we'll conclude with that. Thank you so much, Mr. Rana. Okay, so that was Mr. Mike Rana, and please do get your hands on his book and read some of his book, and you can catch him over lunch and agree or disagree with him, argue or debate with him, yeah, whatever you want. Thank you so much.